Today's feast is obviously about choice. First of all, most importantly, God's choice of Mary to be the mother of his only begotten Son. And he does that, as our collect or opening prayer says, by basically, I forgot, I don't have the right translation, but by applying to her in her mother's womb, from the first moment of her conception, applying to her the graces of Jesus' death and resurrection. In other words, God anticipates, which is why in today's prayer over the gifts, we're going to hear this interesting word that we don't hear too much, prevenient. And if you're a Latin scholar, you'll know that prevenient means looking ahead. So first of all, God chooses to apply, if you will, to Mary from the first moment of her conception, the graces of Jesus' death and resurrection. In other words, he prepares for Jesus' death and resurrection by applying beforehand the graces. But also, it's important to recognize that today we celebrate Mary's choice. It's really important that we hear today's gospel passage as it is meant. She's filled with doubt and fear. She doesn't go, oh, okay, right, here I am. Not at all. I mean, she's greatly troubled, ponders what sort of greeting this might be. And then she said, but. So it's really important not to make Mary godlike, because it takes away from her that most beautiful of things, her choice to say yes to what she can not possibly understand. That's what makes Mary great, is her fiat under the worst possible circumstances. But today, we also celebrate God's choice of you. An explanation. Let's say there's a little girl, let's call her Andrea. She's, I think, like maybe first or second grade. When I say I think, you all who are around children perhaps much more than I am, she's at that stage where two things are true. One is that she and her classmates are aware in a different kind of way of differences between them. And unfortunately, they're also at that stage when they can try to use differences between them to hurt one another. And so what happens is that one of her classmates finds out that she is adopted. And so that little girl says to Andrea, your mother didn't have you like my mother and our mothers had us. And Andrea takes a moment and responds, my mother didn't have me. My mother chose me. What we celebrate today, as Paul reminds the Ephesians and through the centuries us, is that he chose us in him before the foundation of the world to be holy and without blemish before him. And that's where the first reading comes in. That God chose all human beings, and unfortunately, in the beginning, they didn't choose back. And that's where we get the book of Genesis, or those opening chapters of the book of Genesis. But then, Paul again says, in him we were also, I skipped, where am I? In love, he predestined us for adoption. So that's the kind of choice, that God has chosen you as an adopted daughter or son. So do we celebrate God's choice of Mary and Mary's choice of God, saying yes. But my friends, today we also celebrate God's choice of you to be an adopted daughter or son. In him you were also chosen, Paul goes on to say, destined in accord with the purpose of the one who accomplishes all things according to the intention of his will. It is good to be chosen.